Whether you are absolutely convinced that yoga is totally wrong, or if you've never even considered whether yoga is a spiritual issue or not, or if you're someone in between, this video is going to be beneficial for you to watch because I'm going to help you understand the perspectives and beliefs of different Christians and where they're at. And if you're somebody who hasn't considered it, it'll kind of give you sort of the arguments for and against yoga as a Christian. Okay, so the reason why some people say yoga, not good, just stay away from it, is because there really undoubtedly are origins related to paganism, obviously Hinduism, the occult, New Age practices. There's a lot of that kind of ideology. I'm not going to go into the origin really in depth in this video. I'm going to link a blog post that I did that got way more in depth, but I'm going to try to keep this short. But I think we all pretty much know that it has that connection and that association. So what a lot of people say is, well, this is a terrible idea to practice pagan rituals, right? Like, that's not good. I would agree that practicing pagan rituals are not good. Yoga ideology is not biblical. There are, maybe you could pull a couple grains here and there, like gratitude is a good thing or something like that, but there's definitely elements that are totally not aligned with the Bible and are opposite, because we're supposed to look towards God and do things very differently. Another point that I've heard Christians make against yoga is that our spiritual health and well-being is more important than exercise, which I would totally agree with. I don't think we need to have a whole lot of backup to say, your spiritual health is more important than anything if by going in yoga poses you are participating in the occult. That is a bad thing, and no amount of, oh, but it's healthy really matters in comparison to that, if that's what's going on. That's where I get to really what I want to talk about. And I think some people who are in the category of yoga is horrible, all forms of yoga are bad, they may not understand the way that some Christians are viewing this, which is that all kinds of yoga is not actually participating in those rituals. I will say before I go further that there are a couple types of yoga that are highly spiritual, and it is like a no-go, not a good idea to go to classes like those. If you go on Google and you search about this topic, you'll find a lot of YouTube videos about people who were involved with yoga, who then are saying, warning to you all, this is not a good idea. And pretty much without fail, it all involves Kundalini yoga. It is a type of yoga that is very spiritual, and if you see a class that's related to that, don't go to it. As a Christian, it's a bad idea because it is highly spiritual, and that is the kind of thing that people are talking about that you don't want to touch. Another kind of yoga that I haven't seen anyone reference except for in a blog I found about different types of yoga, and that's Jiva Muktu yoga, and it has Hindu teachings. So that's something else that's clearly bringing in this spiritual element that is not biblical. That's bad. However, I think it's really extreme when people say that basically you are participating in a pagan ritual if you go into any of these poses, even if it's a neutral fitness class, even if it's holy yoga and it's Yahweh yoga and they intentionally are bringing in the message of Christ and they lay out their whole theology that is very aligned with the Bible. Like, that's still bad because yoga at one point, it can be and has been used for evil. And I know some people will really disagree with me, but I think people who are a little bit involved in fitness or people who've actually gone to yoga classes at the Y can kind of tell you that. And so the way I'm viewing this here is that the devil doesn't have patents on body postures or breath control or balance or meditation, even for that matter. I've seen a lot of people argue meditation's bad when the Bible talks about meditation. So these are tools that we can use that we don't need to be so scared of the devil that we can't touch it because the devil has touched it. And yoga is so pervasive. I mean, there's literally a pose that's just like if you sleep on your back, like you are incidentally in that pose. And there's a lot of poses that are just literally stretches that I did way before I ever did yoga. So it just could get really ridiculous if you're like, I cannot, like, if you believe the poses are what gives that spiritual badness. And that kind of leads me into the idea of we are not so vulnerable that we cannot hear anything that is outside of what the Bible teaches. And what I mean by this is, should you be in a yoga class and the teacher at the end of the class says something and it's sort of new age, it talks about like consciousness or self-actualization and not Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of way, and you know, and you're like, that seems weird. We have the belt of truth to hear something and then check it against the Bible and then decide, is this true or is this false? And this is a practice that we need to do all day long, not just in yoga class, in every piece of information that we're consuming. You should do it for this video and say, is this true? Does this make sense? Is this being deceitful? Does it align with the Bible? We need to practice that. And Jesus hung out with sinners. He didn't stay 500 miles from them, right? So I think it's really important to not just say, okay, you know what, because there's sort of this mystical element of Eastern culture and Eastern exercise and Eastern medicine and any of that, so I'm just going to stay way, way, way because I don't want to let demons come in. I think that really robs us of an opportunity to understand anybody else's culture to any degree. And then also there's the element of it's been so westernized, so Christianized that it is not yoga. And actually there's some people who are kind of mad about how that is, because some people argue, well, it's not even yoga anymore. It's like, yeah, that's true. So it really depends on the instructor and the class. But again, like Kundalini yoga, don't do that. Something else to point out is that I believe it can be spiritually helpful. So the way kind of another analogy that I see in this is people used to worship the sun, right? There have been historically a lot of people who've gotten very distracted by nature and started worshiping nature instead of worshiping the creator who created nature. But that should not mean that we can no longer use nature to connect to God. So you can bask in the sun and give praise to the Lord, the true Lord of Abraham. You know, like you can do that. It's not like, oh, now I no longer can, appreciate nature because other people worship nature. And that's the same way I view it with yoga. And I think I'm passionate about it because I'm somebody who is kind of physical. That's sort of how I learn. That's kind of how I connect. So while I do believe a lot of yoga classes are truly neutral, I also believe that you can connect to God through like the true God, and not be worshiping other gods, but actually be connecting with him and become more Christ-like, have more peace, learn to be still before the Lord, be still with a little bit of movement. It kind of helps get in that world, and I think that's absolutely beneficial. And that's what organizations like Yahweh Yoga talk about. And then it's nice to do something like that where you know their theology and you know that they're not going to put in some kind of strange stuff, because perhaps you don't want to go there and have to be super alert. So that's kind of my stance on it. And read my blog post if you're interested in this and want to hear more through the thought process and some of the questions that get brought up. If you don't just say, oh, you know what, there's a connection, so I have to stay far away. But I will say, of course, if it listen to the Holy Spirit, pray over it. Maybe for you it's different. I do believe that people with different experiences may need to proceed in different ways. Like if you were super involved in New Age stuff, you may not want to go there. So I view it a little bit more like, some people use eggs for magic, but when kids are having Easter egg hunts, I don't think we're worshiping a fertility god that doesn't really exist. So that's kind of the way I view a lot of things like that. I know some people don't, but I do want to have this video so people can understand more so and understand that it's not always about, oh, you just want to do yoga. But I think it's a very dangerous thing to close things off and keep when it doesn't really make sense, since our Christianity is about a relationship with God and responding to his love and loving other people. And I think part of that involves being around other people and not needing to be in a total Christian bubble. And it just, I cannot believe that we are so vulnerable that should we, put one leg in the air holding ourselves up with our arms, that somehow the devil has some special entrance. And also, I think it's important to note that every thought we have in our head, like, we are constantly being impacted by the devil, and he's constantly prowling around us. And this is not just about the occult or new age or exorcist kind of stuff. Like, in actual real time, there's so many other ways that you're being impacted with incorrect theology or whatnot, that I think worrying about how you stretch, with an instructor that literally said nothing about spirituality, seems rather silly and perhaps even distracting, or could give people this false sense of the devil could be nowhere near me because I stay really far away from that kind of stuff. The devil is around us anyway, but good news, we obviously have the armor of God, and Jesus has already won the victory on the cross. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Comment below with your opinions on yoga and Christianity, whether we should do it or not. Does it help you actually become more Christ-like or not, which is the better question for deciding whether to do it or not. So, peace.